a special welcome to Jim Jackson and his panel that's going to talk to us on planning a research vacation in Washington.
This first section is just planning a research trip in general, not per se our Washington, D.C. trip. And I think I'm very knowledgeable about planning a trip incorporating your family. My wife had absolutely no interest in genealogy, not much in history, and opposites attract, I suppose. But at any rate, I would still finagle trips, side trips, when I could, so that we could both be happy. And it was always easy for me. I had family up in Mount Pleasant, so I could always rely on, would you like to go to the casino for the weekend? And it was a win-win because, I'll enjoy myself, but what are you going to do? So I'll bring a book or I'll find something to do. And I'd end up at the Clark Library at Central. And that happened with a lot of other trips. So genealogy tourism is really a big business. And John put this slide together. I'll let them introduce themselves when we get to it. But I remember when there was a chance that the Library of Michigan might close its doors. And Kurt Witcher from the Allen County Public Library came up and made a pitch that Allen County residents were taxed, I don't know how much, say it's $1 million a year for the collection. But from their sign-in sheets and people coming in from other states, other communities, it generated like 10 times that for the community. So it's not, and that's what we were running in with the politicians. They couldn't afford the expense. And the idea is, this is not an expense. This is a moneymaker. So by all means, do whatever you can to generate interest in your local community. Every local community has history and interesting things for out-of-towners to see. I would recommend a call first. This was in St. Joseph Cemetery that I drove from Detroit. I figured I'd get there early in the afternoon, about 1 o'clock, to do some research. It turned out to be, I don't know how many, probably 100 acres. So it's not like I gave up after a few hours, and there was no one there at the office to show me a map or figure out where that was. And I've run into this in other places. When I went to Detroit for county clerk, they were closed from 11:30 to 1 for lunch. And that's fair, but I went there on my lunch hour. So it was a wasted trip. I've been to small little libraries that I may have more books than they did, but they also have journals of community pioneers that wrote down their thoughts. Very similar to the Laura Ingalls books that eventually were published. But there's a lot of those in little nooks and crannies all over the country with what life was like in their community. And if it wasn't your ancestor that wrote that book, they may have been included, or at least the daily life was the same for your own ancestor. And you never know, even a major repository, you get there and it's a team building day. The library's closed. So by all means, call first. Don't rely on the website, because the website doesn't change on a daily basis. And they may not include all these other partial closings. I don't know if this reunion magazine is still published, but there is still a website for if you're planning a reunion. And the big ones are family reunions, school reunions, and military reunions. And it used to be where everyone has a picnic in some pioneer ancestor's farmhouse, and everyone gathers there. Nowadays, it seems to be a destination reunion, which is probably better for the smaller kids. Whenever I go to a major attraction like Disney World, you'll see 60 people with the same terrible fluorescent t-shirts that you can see a mile away. But I mean, you can tell they're all in the same group. And certainly it's more interesting for the kids than sitting around listening to old stories from the elder generation. And don't forget your own backyard. There's only one national park in Michigan. I thought there were several, but there's many other national trails and scenic lake shores and other things. I was stationed in the Upper Peninsula when I was in the service. Never got out to Isle Royale. I'm not even sure I heard of it, but if you think Mackinac Island is a step back in time, Isle Royale is strictly backpacking. There's no running water or nothing. It's just virgin territory. I've been to the Pictured Rocks and Sleeping Bear Dunes and the Battlefield Park down in Monroe at River Raisin. And I know some of you are aware of the North County Trail. I'd never heard of it before, but even though it goes through Albion, Marshall, Battle Creek, and then goes up north, it's twice as long as the Appalachian Trail. It goes from Vermont to North Dakota. The problem is it's 4,600 miles long. Actually, 4,600 I've seen in one website, 4,800 in another. Well, the problem is when you get to North Dakota, you're parked in Vermont, so you got to walk back to get your car. So take another pair of shoes with you if you go. But while I'm talking about the national parks, they have discount tickets for passes for seniors. A senior pass is $20 for an annual membership. It's $80 for a lifetime membership for anyone 62 years of age and older. And by the look of those attending, some of you may know some older relatives that you could pass that information on to. And if you have an older golden age passport that was good for life, you can exchange those for the newer lifetime pass at no charge. Now, what I just found out, and this was, I think, in 2022, military veterans get a free annual pass, completely free, at all the national parks. And some states, like Florida, have, for elderly, they have a free lifetime pass for all the state parks. So take advantage of your military service or your age and pass it along. Now, the military pass, it includes veterans. You don't have to be retired. It also includes Gold Star families. And Blue Star families are those with active military in their immediate family. That's your parents, your children, your spouse, your siblings. I mean, so that's quite a bit. Gold Star are all of those, anyone who had someone in their family who died in service. And this is the Gold Star and Veteran passport. And again, it's free for all the veterans and Gold Star families. Rhodes Scholar, I never went. I've heard about this for a long time. It was actually founded in 1975 as Elder Hostel. I've really only heard good things about them. The way it started out was, to me, brilliant. They used college dorms, which gives you access to all the classrooms for lectures. The college dorms were cheaper, but it was a full room and living area. So at minimal cost because they weren't being used in the summertime. They've since gone year round, so they can't do that. And they're in upgraded hotels now. They have a lot of filters, which I like. And I'll show you some of these. You can zero in on a particular destination. So you want to go to Pigeon Forge. You click on that and it'll show you the different dates. Or you may be tied into a particular date. Activity level may be important to you. And let me show you the activity level options from easygoing to challenging outdoor activity. So you're going from a lecture hall, maybe learning the history of cinema, watching films, or you're going zip lining or whitewater rafting. The choice is yours. Just be aware that they frown on you signing up for an adventure that you can't keep up with because the rest of the group want to carry on. So, but they're pretty detailed about what to expect on these different trips. This is an example of this Agatha Christie classic film, Mysteries in Sherlock Holmes Legacy, looking at Alfred Hitchcock movies. And when you see somewhere up there, I've got Illinois and Michigan. Actually, John and I signed up for the Life of Michigan, Life of Lincoln in Springfield. I was originally scheduled in April so I could give you a report. That one was canceled, so we're going in a few weeks. The 6, 5, 13 means 6 nights, 5 days, 13 meals, and then the cost plus the difference for a single. The first price is double occupancy each. The SSM and MI is Sault Ste. Marie and Mackinac Island. And I think I could do that for less. But some of these, like the Agatha Christie, is $800 for 6 days. And that includes 6 days to probably 5 nights and probably at least 10 meals. I mean, you can't beat that for $800. Of course, you have to get there. Cruises. Now, this one I've thought of for a long time, but my wife really enjoyed cruises, but I never got around to scheduling a genealogical cruise. But I think she would have gone for it. Are You My Cousin cruises? And they just have, instead of Broadway show tunes from the college students who are cleaning your rooms and serving you meals, doing the performings, you hear genealogical lectures. And sometimes it's tied to where you're going. This is Are You My Cousin? And then here's another one from Ancestry Pro Genealogist. And if you just Google genealogy cruises, that first one is already gone. I just wanted to include it to show you the variety of cruises. This one is all around Europe, Mediterranean. I'm sure the lectures are geared towards that. I've seen these for a long time, and you'll recognize some of the names of the lecturers. And real quick, because we're so close to Memorial Day, if you do know someone who's a veteran, there are Navy lodges all over the world that they can stay at a reduced cost. When we first found out about this, my wife called Hawaii. We wanted to stay at the Big Island, and there were cabins in the Volcanic National Park, right at the upper level of the Big Island of Hawaii. And the price is based on your rank when you were in the service or when you retired. The first price they gave her, and we'd been to Hawaii a couple times, so we kind of knew what to expect. The first price the lady gave my wife was $23 a night. And she says, well, is it possible to upgrade? Which I never heard her say that any other time in her life. But yes, we got our own multi-room cabin for 40 something, I think. So it's a benefit. There's also Space Age travel, which is free flights. I think there's a fee for providing your own parachute. Other than that, I think you have to pay taxes of what it would have been. So it's practically free. When we did go to that Volcanic National Park, there were a dozen families, and they were all from California. They were all from the Air Force like me, but I was the only non-pilot. Everyone else was a pilot. And they just go down to, I forget where they were in California, but there's a big base there. And they have flights leaving every 10, 15 minutes for somewhere. You can't make reservations ahead of time. You can make reservations to make a reservation 30 days in advance. So they pack their bags, they go to the Air Force airport, and they wait around and figure, well, hey, anyone, you guys feel like going to Japan or, Hawaii's in an hour and a half, or, wherever they want to go. You can't do that so much in Michigan, but you don't have that selection. But so you may have to spend 3 or 4 days waiting for a flight. Again, it's available, and there's a bunch of brochures on this website of military living, and they're all downloadable, a PDF. There are a couple hundred pages, so you probably don't want to print them off, but you can still look at it and see it. And this is a list of all the different lodging, camping. There's an RV camping and cabins, one travel guide. So pass this on to some of your military friends. This is Armed Forces Vacation Club, and I think this is about one of the last ones I'm doing on Armed Forces. This is a commercial site. It's not sponsored by the government like the others are. What it is, and it's kind of a good idea, they're empty timeshares, and they're Saturday to Saturday, and they're just about everywhere. Orlando and Bronson and other, Las Vegas and all over. But if they offer you a free breakfast for the next day, be aware that you will be spending half of your day listening to reasons why you should buy a timeshare. These are some of the destinations, Orlando, like Las Vegas. Here are some Branson, $359 for the week. And these usually accommodate 4 to 6 people. So it's a multi-room suite that you get. Plus they have swimming pools, the whole thing, because they're timeshares. And they are different prices. You can see $359 is the norm, but here's one for $419. So it's not bad. And that's about the same as other places. Now, some of these are over $1,000, some are over $2,000, depending on where you're going. Which brings us to our Washington trip. We don't care how you get there. The fun starts after you arrive. So whether it's planes, trains, automobiles, join us in Washington, and I'll turn it over to John and Jan. And
Hi, I'm Jan Getz, and I've been a member for quite a few years, but don't get out so much anymore. And I'm going to do a little talking there on the DAR library.
I'm John Pierce. I'm with the Ionia County Genealogical Society and the West Michigan Genealogical Society, and I've gone several times with this group to DC. And I'm going to talk about the National Archives.
John, maybe you should talk about the hotel and
okay.
what that's about. I forgot that was in line.
We have it set up to stay at the Arlington Court Suites. It's a nice place. They provide you, they call it a light breakfast, but it's usually eggs, some sort of a meat, potatoes, cereal. To me, it's more than I have at home.
Yogurt with fruit, bagels, it's more than a light breakfast.
Yeah. Jan has it set up. She told me the prices.
Jan.
Oh, yes. Jan Wright. For a Studio King, that's one bed, $169 a night plus tax. A Studio Queen, so 2 beds, that's $179 a night plus tax. And a 3-bedroom suite is $239. A 3-bedroom suite would sleep 6 people if you don't mind sharing a bed.
And they have a kitchen, full kitchen in all of them.
Kitchen,
and microwave and refrigerator, the whole, it's like a little apartment.
Yeah. The suites are an apartment, actually. There are people that come and actually live there, military people. You never know who you're going to run into there. Sometimes there's some dignitaries, a lot of military, a lot of young men and women that come in to do special services at Arlington. It's right next to Arlington Cemetery. And when I say right next, you've got a major highway between you and the cemetery, but it's very close.
I put that in there because the peanut truck was there
Yes.
1 year.
The Atlanta peanut truck was there. If you do drive yourself, it's last year anyhow, parking was $15 a night, which isn't bad for a larger city. To get around, because we don't have the bus anymore, it's not feasible to take the bus. We use the Metro or Uber or Lyft. I'm a Metro person myself. It's 2 blocks up to the Metro station. It is an uphill climb, but when you come home and you're tired at the end of the day, it's downhill. If you've never been to DC and never been on the Metro, at least take time to do one ride on it. That's an experience in itself. It's clean, it's safe, but you see a lot of different things, and it's just amazing how fast they can move you around in this large city.
Make sure that if you're in a wheelchair, you actually lock the brakes before it starts going. Because if not, you go flying with the Metro. And your friends will laugh at you. They don't help you, they just laugh at you.
Every few blocks, there's a Metro station. There's 5 lines, I think, that go around through the city. And the larger circles with another circle in it, those are transfer stations. So you can go from one line to another. Now, to go to the archives from the hotel, we get on at Courthouse and we get off at Federal Triangle. And then each way, it's a 2-block walk. Now, if we want to make it, and that's on the orange line. That stays on the same line. Get on and get off. If you want to change, you can change over to the blue line at one of the transfer stations, and you can get off across the street at the Navy Memorial. There's lots of options, but like I say, if you've never been and you go, take the time to ride the Metro. Some of these Metro stations are 3 stories underground. And when I say 3 stories, you're taking an escalator down 3 stories. We have a lady that goes with us a lot that does not like heights. So she rides down backwards, usually with me talking to her, saying, how many blocks are over here? And like this. So, but we all have fun, very laid back.
I will say the Metro is probably the best I've seen in most towns other than maybe Toronto. I mean, it's clean, but there's a Metro stop at the airport. There's a Metro stop by the hotel. There's 2 Metro stops at the zoo. You get off at one and walk downhill to the zoo, and then get back on the other one, which is downhill from the zoo to the Metro station. There's a Metro station stop at Arlington Cemetery. So, I mean, you can really get to anywhere you want to go. And near the DAR, near the monuments, the Vietnam and Washington Monument and all those, and the Library of Congress. So anywhere you really want to go, you can get there by the Metro.
The other thing I do have to say is I went with my Girl Scouts and 2 other adults, and even though you go down some of them 3 places down, they all do have elevators. Some of them are more kind of hidden than the others, but they all do have elevators. And actually, even in the wheelchair with my Girl Scouts and my 2 other adults, it was not hard riding it. We parked the van and never got on the van again until we left. So even in a wheelchair, it was not bad at all to get around, as long as you have somebody that knows how to drive the wheelchair.
I would not recommend driving in Washington, D.C.
No.
at all. Number one, there's no place to park. And if you did find a place, you're just going to pay an astronomical amount of money.
Every 15 minutes.
Use the public transportation or Lyft or Uber. I've never done Lyft or Uber because I like public transportation myself, but it gets me wherever I want to go when I'm there, and probably places I don't want to go.
I have 3 of my girlfriends that actually ended up in that area. They do the Lyft and Ubers all the time, and they've never had any problems. In fact, they talked to me about that one time when I was there right after the Uber guy here was really bad. And I just looked at him like, I am not taking no Uber, I can tell you that. But they do it all the time. They love it. They show up when they're supposed to, and they say they're great to ride there. So
Were you on the last year in the Uber where the guy went down the edge of the road because traffic was backed up?
No.
Well, the group, it was a group of ladies that had gone together and got an Uber to go downtown on the mall. And this guy says, I'll get you right there. Well, he did, but when the traffic backed up, he'd pull over and he'd go right down, just fly down the edge of the road and just close your eyes and go with them. They know what they're doing.
I was with a group that there was one knowledgeable Uber customer, and she did something with her phone, and a car showed up, and then said, "Well, no, I can't take 4 of you," and drove away. Which that's what she recorded was, "I need an Uber for 4 people." So then she did it again, and there was another. I mean, they're there within a few minutes. It's not like waiting for a bus even. So it's good. I just don't have Uber in Battle Creek, so I'm not a
Right.
registered user. Okay, Jan.
Okay, the DAR library. Some of you say, why do I want to go there? Well, here's the big secret about this DAR library. Your second great grandma, her father or great grandfather, whatever, might have went into the DAR, and so you have her stuff. Not only do you have it there and the information, but you will also have it. The source information will tell you where you can get her birth certificate or how they registered that. The DAR is getting very fussy about letting people in. So most of the time, their information is correct. The problem is if you can get on their line, you can get on their website and go to the GRL, and that will give you a printout of all the applications there. You do not need to be a member. You can get the application for $10. You can also get the source information, and that's $15 these days. The problem being, when you're there in the library, you actually can get on their computers. You can actually see the copy of the application. Because here's what can happen if you order the source information at home. It'll say let's say your great great grandma, and you're like, oh my God, I didn't know where she died. I didn't know where she was born. But then you can order the source information, and on the second page is where you record the source information. And then you will also get the source information. The problem being is on that source information, it might give a lady's name and a lady's number, and then it'll say see her sheet. So you now ordered source information that does you no good because all you're going to see is a thing saying see her sheet. So if you're actually there, you can look that up, and now you can go to that person and see if that's the one you need. Or sometimes I went through like 9 of them before you actually get the one you're needed. So that is one of the really good things. When I would go to DC, I've always had some walking issues, but it was small enough I could get around, and I lived there and had so much fun. Artis and I would go there, and of course, Artis and me were like Wayne and I am, which was comic relief. So it was always a great time. And there is so much information there. They have tons of books that you can look up that might have what you're looking for. So it's not just DAR stuff. It's basically full of genealogy stuff too. But I think sometimes people forget that and just think it's DAR. Well, it's not. It's a lot of great, great information.
And it's really information and copies of records that may not be available in that period of time. You know, like you may not have birth records, but they have church records, you know, to prove the same facts.
And actually, you can get copies of the church records on their website. So it's very much worth going there and seeing what's on that website too. And if you want to become a member, then you will work with somebody and they actually they can get to the database that we all can't get to. It was a very sad day when I had to give that up. But, all things come to an end. The one thing to be aware of, if you're taking pictures, it will cost you $20 to take pictures. You can take one picture or you can take 100, 200, 300 pictures. It is $20 a day. And not like I ever went to the stacks and took one picture for the day. But, if you're taking a lot of pictures, it's well worth it. It's so much more convenient. And I did notice you can also have copy machines. Any of you that have been there before, used to be you walked in and you turn this way and you go to the computer rooms. You don't do that anymore. They have now put the computers in with the main library. They're right up there in front. And so basically you'll spend most of your day right in that front room. And then it's like it's kind of like a gym, almost like the old archives. And up here is where they keep all those books and family histories and that kind of thing. So it is a very, very great place to go for a lot of great genealogy information.
There are more books on the second level, but really, on the second level, there's a room for each state with period pieces that were, this is what our life was like in our state back in the day. Michigan doesn't go back that far because it seems like there was a radio or television or something. I mean, so it's not like the 1700s in all of them, but some of them may be, and some of them may be 1800s, and some of them may be early 1900s. But you're going to want to take a break from research at some point, and that's a good thing, just to walk around and clear your head to view those rooms.
Another thing with the DAR is all the books they publish, you'll be able to find there. Like if I had New York ancestors and I needed to look at Bible records, I had to go to New York to see them because they don't have them here in Michigan. They have the Michigan ones, but you can get them all there. So if you have several states, you can check that out. And their notarized Bible records help me break a brick wall.
And I will add that the DAR, in the 40s, when they did cemetery and they did vital record publications, they printed 6 to 10 books, I guess, on onion skin paper with carbon in between. So the first copy went to Washington. Other copies went to the local libraries around the area for like Michigan. There are some DAR publications at the Library of Michigan that you really are going to have trouble reading because the 10th copy of onion skin and 10 copies of carbon paper, and some of you younger people may not understand what I'm even talking about. It just occurred to me, but it's just a blur. You can't tell the difference between a lowercase o and lowercase e at all. The first copies are in Washington, so you can, it's like reading a book out of a bookstore. It's very easy to read. And here's the entrance that where we normally go in for the DAR. And
they do have a handicap entrance if you need it.
And this is what I was talking about. There's the balcony with more books. Beyond that are the rooms, individual rooms for the states. And this is just looking down. And they don't let you take pictures like this. I'm not sure who gave me this picture, but they don't, and this is true at any place, they don't want you taking pictures of the other researchers. It's a privacy issue. You'll run into that at other libraries also.
National Archives, my favorite place to be. There's two sides to the National Archives. On the Constitution Avenue side, the side that he's showing you now, is where you go in to see the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, or no, Declaration of Independence and the
Bill
Bill of Rights. You see the main entrance there. Well, you go in underneath the steps on the left. As you face it, it'd be at the entrance on the left. On the right goes to special meetings.
This is a side view of the front of it and the side. And as you go from the front to the side, just beyond this slide, there's a little bus enclosure. That's not a city bus. That's the National Archives bus that takes you out to another annex of the National Archives. And I think we'll talk about that also, but it's for College Park. Out there, they have completely different records and completely different security, so you have to re-register like a new place.
Can you go back to the... All right, I said it was about a 2-block walk from where you got off the metro. That big, tall building there, that's the old post office, and that's where Federal Square, where you get off. So you can see it's just down the street a little bit. This is on Pennsylvania, the other side of the archives, and you enter that little round door, which is quite massive when you get there. But between the two statues, and it's just like going into a very elite hotel of the 40s. Just beautiful inside. I mean, it just always awes me. But as you go in, you're going to go through a little entrance, and then you go into, and anything with the federal government anyhow is security. So you have to go through, you have to register, give them your name, a phone number, or if you have an ID card, they'll just use your ID card. Then you got to go through the metal detector. And once you're through that, you're welcome to go back into the facility. Yeah.
So the orientation.
So, yeah. Before you go, you want to go online, and I think in Jan's Zoom meeting, she will have the website to get right straight to the orientation. Do your orientation there. You just go in, and they look at it. They have you go in, fill out this card on the computer, and they issue you your card, and you get your research card. Your research card is also, you can put money on it for the copy machines, if you want to use the copy machines. So you always want to remember to close out the copy machine when you're done, or somebody's going to be using your research card to pay for their copy. So you get that done. But you got to have a research card in order to submit a request for military records. That's a request for military records, and it pretty much follows the military index cards. And you just fill it out as it is here, and see it has a spot where you put your research card number, and that way they can track who has it. You can't take bags up into the research room. On the second floor is the research room, and that's a secure room that you go in. You can take loose paper, a couple sheets, a pencil, a camera, a flatbed scanner.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're now letting you use the book reader type scanners, plus they will provide some for you. Then I do everything either with my phone or with a camera. It's because I don't want to pay 25 cents for 100 copies, because if that's could be a small pension. Pensions can be that thick. Never know what you're going to find in one.
This is College Park. This is the other archives. They do have photographs and film and audio recordings and things out there. But
so on the top, you've got your request for a military. That's what you turn into them. That goes into, they send that in the back, and they will then send your records up to the research room. When your record comes back, at the bottom is a military, that's a little packet, and they have what they call military cards, and they are cards that they've gone through all the military books, the field books, and in the 30s, and they have written what this person has done out of these field books onto these cards. So it gives you a chronological order of what they've done. And then if something comes up later or something didn't get put in the card, you'll notice on the very first one, I point here, but you guys can't see me point. There's a number down at the bottom. That's called a bookmark. And a bookmark you take to a second place in the archives, and they will pull the bookmark, which usually comes in a folder or a box, an archival box, and you have to go down through and find it. But it could have all kinds of things in it. And that's my great-great-grandfather. When I pulled his record, I didn't know about bookmarks. And a few years later, when I pulled his bookmark, that told how he got his pension because he'd gone AWOL. And it was after the war. But an act of Congress gave him his pension so that his wife was able to get it after he died.
Which military records are in Washington?
Pre-1900.
Because then personnel records are like in Missouri or something, or St. Louis. Or,
For the world wars and
recent.
beyond, yes.
okay.
Yeah. Pre-1900. So Civil War, War of 1812, the Indian Wars.
And the Revolution 1812, a lot of those are online, so don't bother even ordering them. Revolution, I think, is complete. War of 1812, pension records are all online from A through S, I think SH, and they're still working on completing those.
You know, down at Fort Wayne, they have USB ports that you can put into the copy machines. Do they have something similar here, or
I think
are
you
they
can
only they're
scan.
strictly copy
I
machines?
think you can scan.
I
You get a
think-
printout or a scan.
Yeah, I think you can. I can't say positively because I do mine all digitally with a camera, or
Same with me.
because I will come home with maybe 20 pension records because I not only get mine, but I get for some of my friends also.
I think my norm is roughly 2,000 photos a day,
Yeah.
and at 50 cents each, it's better to do it on a digital camera.
I think a big advantage of digital is when you get home and you put it on your computer, you can blow up that terribly small, hard to
Exactly.
read handwriting, and you've got a chance of figuring out what it really says.
Okay, so you've got up one of the pension index cards up at the top, and you'll see where down on the bottom where it says invalid, you put the same numbers in. What you're going to get into, even we just talked about what's there and what isn't. There will be some XP numbers that they have, and these were men that lived to be quite old, or they're widows, and their pensions, a lot of them went into the 20s and 30s of the 1920s, 1930s, and they ended up in St. Louis because they were later. But once in a while, you always want to turn them in because sometimes they do show up there also.
Just to be clear, when we talk about this form has 3 boxes, and you have to put a separate form in for the same person, same soldier, for each one of those 3 that you're interested in. So military pertains to his military career. Was he there at muster roll, or was he absent? If he was absent, was he AWOL? Was he in the hospital? Was he reassigned? And it'll list other, if he was temporarily assigned to another unit and things like that. The bookmark I've run across, it's still military per se, but he had to pay $17 for a rifle that he didn't turn in. He might have lost it in the middle of a battle, but that's the way things go. So pension records, we tend to think of pension as retirement. If you were disabled, if you lost a limb or eyesight or hearing during the war, you would get out with an immediate pension. But as time went on, more and more soldiers were getting ailments caused by their war career. So, and as time went on, there were less and less veterans to pay pensions. So it kind of worked out. But it's kind of funny to read some of the pension records that, my father can no longer do a full day's man's work on the farm. Well, he's 88 years old. I I couldn't have done it when I was 40. But I mean, they're trying to make a case that he's no longer useful. He needs this $8, $10 a month pension. So it's usually, the amount is usually determined on his rank and the condition he's in. And believe me, they all suffered from ailments from their service career when they're 80. When you're 20 and sleeping out in the rain for 3 years, it's no, you're young. Suck it up, But when you're 80, you've got the rheumatism and the arthritis and all the other ailments that's going to catch up with you at that age.
The other thing, almost every pension record I have looked at, the man suffers from diarrhea, and that comes from the food and water. And it left a lasting mark on their lives.
He mentions that one trip I almost didn't go because right before I was diagnosed with colitis, ulcerative colitis. And so Wayne goes to the archives to get me a pension record for somebody I have for, all the records over there. And of course, Wayne and I and, a group of us are in the back because we're loud and we like to be. And he's in the front of the bus and he's just like yelling at me, Jan, guess what he died from? He died from diarrhea. So yeah, the bus was very much fun too. So that part you're missing out on.
Yeah, that is true. So
one other thing, well, there's a pension record right there. So that gives you an idea of the amount of stuff. And some of it is just the same over and over, but you'll get an affidavit that's a neighbor affidavit. And I got one, and 2 men had signed it. And the one I knew was the man's nephew, or his wife's nephew, but I didn't recognize the other name. A year later, I went back and read that thing again, and when I read the man's name, I go, Curtis. That was his mother-in-law's maiden name. It was an uncle signed saying that he wanted it. And she died in 1848. Well, finding out that this was her brother, I was able to trace that line back then. So you don't know what it's going to open up.
which explains the photo on the left side of the screen.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to get in the pensions. They had to prove not only military service, but when they died, their wives had to prove they were married and never married anyone else. So you'll get affidavits, like you said, from neighbors and people that were at the wedding. You'll get, those Bible records with the family information. You'll get those 10 pages ripped out of the Bible and sent to Washington so that they prove. And for some reason, that was legal in a court of law, because who would write something untrue in a Bible?
Well, and I got one from a black man that served in the colored troops, and they weren't saying this isn't right. And you almost could read discrimination in the thing when they were trying, but it was like, nope, we're not going to say that this is a real thing. This
is the reading room on the second floor where your records come to. And these are the they used to say 150-year-old records, but they're older than that now. This is one of the researchers in action.
Oh, yes, and you get a little badge. You have to wear that all day. You can see it on my collar there.
Yeah, the visitor yellow badge. Yeah, I've seen family Bible pages written out, original marriage certificates, death certificates, portraits, photographs, affidavits, and newspaper clippings.
I have an Adobe Scan app that crops it right when I take the picture, and if I just need to make it a little bigger, I can do it right then and save it.
I use a camera.
I usually use my phone. I have a nice phone on my camera.
Yeah. Well, I just found with this Adobe app that and you can convert it from a PDF in this app back to a JPEG if you want.
I've been using a camera for years, and the phone cameras have caught up to the digital cameras. So
Yes.
yeah, either one is going to give you really good copies.
But you know, some people, when they get a certain age, they don't ever want to change and try something new.
Moving on. This is when we talk about the Library of Congress. Last time I went there, I had half a dozen books and pamphlets I wanted to see, and she just went through all the forms that I filled out. He said, "These are all online. You can read them at home." And it's like, wow, good to know. I don't remember seeing anything like that on the catalog page, but I may not have looked. But there's 3 different buildings for the Library of Congress. The first one was the Thomas Jefferson Building, which I would recommend going. I guess they don't have guided tours anymore, but they do have self-guided tours. And it is something just to view the circular reading room. It's just a beautiful building. And I think they still have one of the original Gutenberg Bibles. You can look out in the hallway under glass. You can't thumb through it or anything. The other is the James Madison Building. I believe that's the one with the Mary Pickford Theater. They have movies twice a month, and it's usually introduced either by a film historian or someone involved with a motion picture, like the director or something. I mean, they go from silent films to, I saw them as recent as Lilies of the Field and those, but they're mostly 30s and 40s that you may not even be able to see on TV. And then the John Adams Building, they all have different collections. You have to go through security every time you enter a building, but the Library of Congress, those 3 buildings are connected by tunnels underneath, and they're open to the public. So you can go in one building and spend the day going back and forth to different places without having to go through security at each place. And all of these have help websites that have videos and other finding aids. This is just the Library of Congress research guides, and they're in alphabetical order and it goes page after page. Here's one on Michigan local history and genealogy research guide. It gives you tips on how to prepare your trip. There's a genealogy and family history research, a guide to online research, and certainly just looking at these things on YouTube, you'll find a wealth of information too. This is for next month. James Cagney and Betty Davis. She spelled it differently later, didn't she? I don't remember it spelled that way, but at any rate, she wasn't impressed with that movie. I don't know if you can read the bottom of it, but it was like all she got out of it was a derriere full of cactus quills. And when you're not researching, and on our bus trips, there were always non-researchers. They were just going along for the ride and going to the museums. And there's a boatload of places to spend your time outside of the 3 archives we talked about.
I would suggest that if you do go, set a day aside to do some sightseeing, because that's as much a part of the journey as the research.
And check the websites, because some of these it's free, but you may need to register to get in, so they can kind of control the crowds. The exception is the White House. The White House, you have to go through your congressman, and there's information.
I believe the Capitol you do too, don't you?
I think you can go through the Capitol.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
In the waiting room.
Back
Okay,
then,
yeah.
I don't know about now.
This is, and these are side trips we took on the bus. Last year, some of us drove, so we were able to go out to Mount Vernon again. But these are all day trips that we took. You can get there and spend the day there and get back in a day, just set aside for any of these.
And if you go to the White House, pretend you can't walk and use a wheelchair. Because if so, you get to go off, to go upstairs, you have to get to an elevator, and you go through this little dining room. And the day we went, it was me and Wayne and this little Secret Service guy who I think looked so tough because he was so small next to Wayne. But he was just like stern face and like, I'll kick your butt if I need to. And, but anyways, we go through this little kitchen. And that day, I don't know who was having it, but somebody was having these big old jumbo shrimp, like bigger shrimps than I've ever seen in my life.
We call them lobsters up here.
Yeah, exactly. So you get a little side detour if you're handicapped at the White House. But follow their rules, because if you accidentally forget and bring something you're not supposed to, you don't get a second chance. They say bye-bye to you. So really keep that in mind if you do go to the White House, because they do mean business.
So I knew some of the groups went to see a group called Capitol Steps at the Kennedy Center. They were a comedy group. We went to Fredericksburg and Bull Run. We went to Fort McHenry in Baltimore. These are all, within a few hours of downtown. Now, on the way back, one time we stopped in Toledo to go to Tony Paco's restaurant. Anyone familiar with the name? You remember Klinger on MASH? He always talked about Tony Paco's. And, we all had hot dogs.
It wasn't anything special.
And we did leave early one trip on Friday to get a few hours under a belt, because this was the extreme end to end the bus driver could go. He couldn't, we were stretching it. So he couldn't take any side trips. So we left early and got a few hours under a belt, stayed at another hotel, and then went to the United Airlines Flight 93 that crashed in Pennsylvania. And a lot of these, even the History Museum, these are, or the other Smithsonians you go through.
Castle.
No, I was thinking of the Jewish, the
Holocaust.
The Holocaust Museum. These are very moving experiences. So, and United Airlines flight was too. And here's the information about that congressional. When we were at Fort McHenry, Carolyn Mack announced that this was going to be her last trip. She wasn't doing it anymore. So there was a place you could lock people up. And funny thing, coming back on the bus, John thought I was going to let her out, and I thought John was going to let her out. So I was hoping to maybe see her here today.
John wasn't on that particular bus ride. So.
Well, no wonder. No wonder. Oops. Arlington restaurants, and these are within walking distance, if you're healthy, of the hotel. The Four Courts Ireland Irish Pub, the Ragtime Restaurant, and the Cheesecake Factory. So, and there are a lot of other little spots. There's some downtown, but they're hard to find. You might, if you're in a hurry, and you probably are, if you're in the middle of doing research, you may resort to a food truck. That's up to you. There are a few places to eat. Right across, there's the garden that has a cafe.
And the archives usually has a cafeteria in the basement. It's only open for a short period.
And if you can't walk, nobody hikes you up that hill. You take the van from the hotel, because that hill is like this.
I pushed you up there one year.
You never made it to the top of the hill.
No, that's when we stopped. We passed the Ragtime.
We went to the first restaurant that was available.
That was the Ragtime.
This hill is really.
This looks really good.
Very steep.
Sorry to tell you, but they don't have the van anymore.
Really?
No, they don't.
That's
so
awful.
you use a taxi or Uber.
This is some of us outside the Four Courts Irish Pub. Some of us went there more than once.
Maybe 3 or 4
Where'd she
times.
go?
back
There she
there.
is. We won't mention any names, Jan. So I think that's it.
When I went, we always had to go to the Cheesecake Factory at least one night.
So we still go in honor of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they text me from it. Hey, we're at the Cheese Factory.
If you've never been there, I don't know why, because they've got 100 different kinds of cheesecake, and every one looks good. But they give you order your entree, and you get, well, I'll just take a salad. The salad is
They're huge.
like that.
Yeah.
Why aren't they give you so much when their business is selling dessert? But it's just huge. So, in addition to this, there are going to be 2 Zoom meetings with more updated information and answer any other questions. But on July 10th and August 7th, you can register at mikvgs.org under the trips, under Washington, and hope to see you join us for there also. And I think we probably only have a short time for questions, so any questions from the audience?
Yeah, Jan.
The trip is awesome. And we've got some people who have gone as many as 10 or 15 years. But if you can't go or you don't want to go, we have those researchers who have gone for 10 or 15 years and they've got their research done and they're happy to do research for other people. So get your names lined up that you'd like to have some research done on, and people will be happy to take all the digital pictures in the world for you.
I do want to emphasize you can go there on your own and do your research, but at 5 o'clock when all the archives and museums close, it's nice to sit down with like-minded people at a nice restaurant and talk about your failures and your successes during the day. And sharing, I mean, we've all shared new records that we discovered, so we're all better off having traveled with this group over and over again.
By being with a group, this person, somebody told us about bookmarks. We never knew what they were. My first time I went by myself, I had a bookmark. I didn't do anything with it. So we learned about bookmarks. Then somebody else says, oh, you want to go in and pull the medical records, because that's a whole nother category. And pulled the medical records, and if they'd been in the hospital, there'll be a record on them. And most of the guys at some point were in the hospital for something.
Whether it was a lance boil or an amputation. And it could have been within minutes of each other.
We've talked a lot about military, but there are also patent land records if your ancestor bought property from the government, or also homestead records. So there are lots of other things. Immigration records. You don't have to have a military person that you're looking for to find things at the archives.
My record that I pulled for my AWOL ancestor, when I was talking with the staff, they sent me to the special collections people, and they pulled the actual bill from Congress in the 1880s so that I could read it, because they says, you want to look at this because his name might be in there. I didn't luck out that much, but that's the type of stuff. You just don't know what all is there.
And usually the people that are there are very good about helping you.
And extremely knowledgeable.
Like a lot of places, they are understaffed now, and you possibly will have to register ahead of time to go to the National Archives, because last year anyhow they were only limiting so many people a day. And I think it started out with COVID, but then I think staffing problems, because they definitely didn't have the staff that they used to.
So yeah, that's a good point. You do need to reserve a slot for every day you want to do research. And you can cancel them if you want to reserve 5 days. I don't think we locked anyone out last time, which I thought there would, But and if the day we took a day trip, we just canceled out for that one day and took off to Mount Vernon.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was wonderful, and we appreciate it. I know they've mentioned to check out our website. There's some forms on there with information on the hotels that we've mentioned and some phone numbers. There's places to register both on that form. You can link in for the Zoom meetings. And those are also on the events page on our website. So those I think will be really handy hands-on meetings for specific questions that you may have. And they're in early July and early August so that everybody can touch base and just make sure you're on track for your plans.